I'm at the Red House with Lawren Desai, and thank you for doing this.
Thanks for asking me. I've been waiting to be asked.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to have you. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you've been my employer at Aperture for a really long time, and never know if I guess I didn't really know if you wanted to be on the podcast or not, but I'm glad you wanted to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So this is a strange opportunity because you're my employer, and I'm going to indulge in some questions that are just like whatever, fun to ask that I probably wouldn't ordinarily take the opportunity to ask you. And it's mainly like just your story, just where you come from and why you are and why Aperture is and stuff.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start with that because I feel like I get asked that a lot, and I give there's a long version, then there's an abridged version, and I guess which version do you want?
Let's see what unfolds. Why don't we start with just first, are you originally from Winston?
Yeah, via Gastonia, North Carolina, where I lived for 6 months, and then I ended up here.
Gastonia. Mm-hmm. That's where your family was at, and just at the time.
Yeah. Well, my parents had moved there. My dad's an architect, and he was from Pennsylvania, and the opportunities in architecture were in North Carolina, and he ended up in Gastonia, and then this opportunity in Winston-Salem opened up. And at the time, this was in the late 70s, it was Charlotte was not the Charlotte that it is today, and it was choosing between two very similar places, and they ended up in Winston-Salem. In hindsight, maybe, would have been different if they stayed in Charlotte. But at the time, they didn't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I grew up in the West End neighborhood in Winston-Salem. And then I went to high school, and Winston-Salem in the 90s is not Winston-Salem today. And I said when I left that I was never moving back here, ever.
Hell yeah.
I was really adamant.
It seemed to work out well.
I didn't. I was gone for college, and then I lived in LA and then New York after. And I only came back to get my graduate degree at Wake. I still wasn't planning to stay. But somehow things worked out, and I'm here.
Yeah, so that's part of the fun part is I've heard different little bits about your life so far and stuff, but I've never really I've never had the opportunity to ask you why maybe you even were drawn to New York or LA, and what you wanted to do while you were there and stuff, and where you went to school and all that stuff. Where did you go to school?
Yeah, so for college, I wanted to go to a big city. I knew that, and my dad was like, you should look at Penn in Philly. And so I did, and I loved it, and just applied. I literally went one time to visit on a college tour, and just spur of the moment decided to apply and got in. And it was really great, and I still didn't quite have my city fix out of me, so that's when I decided to move to LA. Just drove cross country, and and then I went to LA to take a class in filmmaking, a professional program in production, and as part of that you were supposed to have internships, so I interned on a couple studio lots, and I worked on some really micro budget indie films, and I just sort of tested the waters with film, and got into grad school at USC for directing. And it was really having lived in LA, I was really nervous to put that kind of money into getting a degree in film, not 100% sure, knowing that I wanted to be a filmmaker, and also not knowing that I could ever pay that money back.
Right.
So I decided to not do that at the moment. And I ended up coming back here because I was broke, and living at home and working at the School of the Arts in the film school. And still I wasn't ready to be back in Winston, so I was like, where can I go next? And it was oh, maybe I'll try New York. So I moved there. I'm very adventurous and independent, and not sort of scared of things. So I moved to New York and got a job there, and I was there for 9/11, and kind of after that experience, I wasn't sure that I wanted to stay in New York, and I knew I wanted to go back to school, and just applied to Wake to get my MBA, and that's how I ended up back here.
I see. So your interest in film definitely does predate the existence of Aperture.
Yes.
And I mean, what was there a way that you can explain why you maybe were drawn into filmmaking? Was that something that you had appreciated for a long time?
I think I was drawn as like a consumer of films. I mean, I just loved films growing up, and we rented movies all the time, from the Action Video on Peters Creek Parkway. I mean, that was what you did. You went Friday night and you got 3 movies, and you spent like an hour deciding what you were going to get. And so I just watched movies all the time. But I didn't ever, when I was young, really think much beyond that, other than just loving watching movies, except for in, I can't remember which year in high school, but world history, one of the requirements was you had to do a dramatic interpretation of a historical figure. And I was given Golda Meir, the Prime Minister of Israel, and I did not want to stand in front of the class and just do a dramatic interpretation of this she was an older woman when she was prime minister, and I was like, well, what can I do? And I just decided I was going to make a documentary with a VHS recorder and just edit as I was filming, which I did. Like, I somehow made this documentary where I would film like scenes in my dollhouse. I would film photos from the book, and I edited it as I went, stopped and started. It was very rough. And then my dog got in it. It was like barking in it. It's very comical. And after I did this, everybody in the class loved it because it was so different, and they were so tired of watching people stand up there.
Yeah.
But then it was outlawed after I did that because I broke the rules. But so I had this sort of interest in film in that way, and using it to sort of tell history. And so that was always there. But I was going to be a lawyer. I mean, that's what, after Penn, I was going to go and be an attorney. And I worked for one and absolutely hated it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I was like, I'll just take a year off. And I'd found this course at UCLA, and I was like, I'll just go out to LA and do this and see what that leads to.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. So you did that, New York. And what did you like? Was film on your mind doing the New York thing? Like, was that still what you were?
Yeah. When I left LA, and then having worked at the film school, I moved to New York trying to get a job in film. It just was not as easy as I thought it would be. And I was in New York and had rent to pay, so I just got whatever job I could, which happened to be working for a high-end luxury Swiss watch company. I don't know how I got that job, but I did, and I was their merchandiser, and I got to travel around the U.S. and Canada just setting up displays for them and go to Switzerland. It was really a cool job for a young 20-something, and
Yeah.
got a lot of frequent flyer mile. I mean, it was really great. And then September 11th happened, and I was like, I don't know that I want to be here anymore.
Where were you during that?
I mean, that could be a whole podcast episode. But I was on my way. I lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. I was actually supposed to travel that day. I was on my way across the Queensboro Bridge, I think, into Manhattan to go to work. When, I think I noticed smoke in the sky from whichever one of the trade centers was first hit. But you don't know
Yeah.
I was in the middle of a cab, and then my cab got in a wreck on the bridge. So I had to walk the rest of the way to work while I'm listening to people in the streets talking about it's like a tower had been hit, and nobody really understood what was going on. But then I walked into my office, and it was a small, maybe 12 employees. And one of my colleagues, her husband was in a tower, and so she was talking to him. He ended up passing away. So it was just a lot. so later that day, I walked back to Brooklyn across the same bridge that I'd driven across earlier that day to go back home. But it's one of those days that I can just remember vividly every sort of second.
Yeah.
I think people have that when they think about when JFK was shot. I mean, so it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah, I was younger at the time and I didn't understand what was going on. But I've heard, a similar story from plenty of people. Like it's such an impactful moment in time that it's really fascinating to piece people's stories together. But I think you might be the closest to the event of a direct story that I've heard from somebody.
It's really weird because I was there as it's happening, so I didn't see any of the news stuff until, in fact, on the anniversary this past year, I actually sat down and watched some things that I'd never seen before because I just wasn't experiencing in the way that most people in the country were experiencing it, which was watching it sort of live or the rest of the day. Like we didn't have TV things stopped working for a bit. And so it's kind of surreal to go back now and sort of see it as everybody else saw it.
Damn. So, yeah. So from that, after that experience, maybe some lingering time, I don't know. So you come back to North Carolina, go to Wake, and by that time you were still kind of planning on not being here to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was getting my MBA and I was like, oh, I can go anywhere with it. I can get a job anywhere. But I met my future husband. And so then we were both trying to find jobs and figuring out where we could go together. And it was like, well, whoever gets the first job offer, then the other person will sort of try to find a job there. Mm-hmm. And I got a job in Greensboro. And so then he found a job here in Winston, and it was like, I don't know if you grew up in Winston. It's like, well, I'm not living in Greensboro. I'll just commute.
Yeah.
That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Well, that lays the groundwork for sure. So then there's just film. There's like film and there's, I guess, the bit of whatever happened between you getting this job in Greensboro and finally getting Aperture off the ground. Some of this stuff I'm sure we can talk about in a different context, but more abstractly, I think. I mean, I know you, and I know that you like be going to music shows and stuff, and I get the impression that you're typically aware of what's going on throughout the state artistically, and that you curate a movie house. Like, what is it about the arts, I guess? Like, was that always a part of your appreciation or whatever, a part of your perspective in life, the arts?
Yeah, I think not knowing that it was. I mean, I think that I'm like I said, I'm a consumer of art. Like I'm not creative. Like I can't draw. I played middle school clarinet. That was about as far as I got. I really wasn't very good. And so like the talent, I just didn't have the talent to do that myself, but I really appreciated it in other people. And just think artists are some of the coolest people around. And I think for film in particular, and why I'm so gravitated to it, is to me it's like all of the arts rolled up into this one amazing art form that is this global phenomenon and a way to also tell stories. And so that to me was like, oh well, like you can have a little bit of music and visual arts and literary arts and all together in this like thing that's 2 hours that you can just appreciate.
Yeah. And as I've been kind of seeing more and more, also cuisine, also like what I've been seeing more due to the events going on through work and stuff, the cuisine. What was his name? Ron, the guy from UNCSA that I got to talk to for exposure.
Oh, Ron Sacker Thompson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said something about film compared to theater that was like so eloquently put, that was like you don't have to create a set that puts you in like Moscow or Spain or wherever, like you can actually film can actually go there. You can actually be there. And I was like, oh man, yeah, that is it's like a huge part of the appeal. It's like the locations you can be in.
Yeah, I think that's why I particularly like world cinema, because I love to travel and like get stir crazy when I don't have another trip planned. And so watching a film from another country sort of takes you there, and you get to see parts of the world that you might never see. And then there's also this connection that you can see a film from another country, and it's like, well, they're still kind of living the same lives that we're living here and dealing with the same issues and, the same dramas. And they just sometimes maybe speak a different language.
Mm-hmm. So why travel?
I got the travel bug when I was really young.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think why I was so open to just going anywhere. I just love it. I love going to other places. I like everything about it. I like the traveling there, either by plane or car. And then I like, seeing people that don't look like me or speak like me, and the food
Mm-hmm.
and the culture.
When did this travel bug start?
I don't know. Like, I think we took our first international trip when I was in middle school to England. And so that wasn't exactly an exotic place. I mean, they spoke English.
Yeah.
And my cousins and aunt and uncle lived there. So, like, we were staying with family. But it was like they drove on the other side of the road. And it was just this different thing that you couldn't get here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've been seeking it out since then.
Been chasing the dragon.
Yeah, and I don't like it when I don't have my next trip planned.
Interesting.
I think that's sort of my bargain with being in Winston-Salem is that I need to be able to leave it to appreciate it again and keep going and coming back. And
I would also think, I mean, it also, I guess, is kind of a place that the living is so affordable too that it might be, I don't know, it might not be, but like in my mind, it would be easier for me to like save up money here while living here to travel to more places.
it definitely is. And the places that you can just drive to. I mean, North Carolina is a pretty, I think, remarkable state in that you can go to the mountains and the beach. And then anywhere, up to D.C. and down to Atlanta pretty much make a day trip out of it. And then the airports are very, you can fly out of Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh. I mean, not a lot of places have that ability.
Yeah.
And yes, you're right. Like the cost of living definitely factors into, I think, how travel is really accessible here.
So where all have you traveled?
I think our last trip was this summer. We went to Ireland and Belgium and England. We have family. My husband has family in England, so that's a really easy place for us to go to. And it's in London, which is like this global. I mean, so many things you can do in London culturally. But we before the pandemic, we went to Japan.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is great. I think now, having gone to Europe, like I'm really looking for those places that make you feel like you don't belong. And
Yeah.
Like as an American, and in Japan, like you clearly don't look like anybody else.
Yeah. I have that little poster from
Yeah. I can't remember which film I brought you back.
it was The Biggest Little Farm.
Yeah.
Was that from Japan?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite place y'all have been?
No, because I think that would make it hard to go to the next place.
Yeah.
I kind of don't, like, other than going back to London, which I can stomach, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to go back to places really that I've been to because I want to go to the next place.
Okay. So I didn't know about you that like it causes you, what did you say? Does it cause you anxiety to not have your next trip planned?
Yes, it does. And I don't have one right now. I'm very anxious.
Gotcha.
It's pretty expensive to travel right now. We've I spent a lot of time researching and looking for the deals and the best Airbnbs to make the trip affordable. And
So with that said, what you said about Winston and the bargain and stuff, and now in hindsight, haven't seen Winston kind of change so drastically from when you opened Aperture. Like, I don't know. Is it easier to look back and see that you stayed? Is it like a good? Do you feel solid with that decision now?
yeah, because like if Winston was how it was in the '90s, where downtown was pretty desolate, I couldn't be here because I didn't find my people weren't here then, and now I think with all the people are moving in, there's an interest and desire for Winston-Salem to be doing all these cool things, and Aperture can be a part of that. Yeah, I mean, I still have some angst sometimes about. I mean, it's kind of also probably a midlife crisis, like that I'm here, and I don't know. I think everybody probably has that at some point.
Yeah. So when you say, okay, I noticed a little thing there. You said your people weren't downtown or whatever, and you mentioned kind of cool things happening. Like, who are those people? Like, what are the things that you relate to, I guess, in like a vision or something? Like, what does that mean?
I think I have a lot of different people, actually, but some of them are people that like are doers. I mean, I think the reason that I opened up Aperture is that I was tired of waiting for somebody else to open up a cinema. I mean, there had been sort of talk and there were things, but it was like, well, let's just do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, having lived in Philly and LA and New York, those places I had access to cinema and films like that I wanted to see. And I was like, well, you can have that in Winston too. Yeah. We're the city of the arts. I mean, like we had the first arts council, like clearly there's people that are interested in art. And you can't call yourself that without having film be a part of it and having a cinema.
Fair.
So like there are lots of people like that just did it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had them on your podcast.
Some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is actually one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and it's nice that it got brought up. Like, when I think back on the last 6 years or whatever, I obviously notice about you that you're ambitious and that like you take your goals seriously, like you actually pursue them. And a lot of people don't, and a lot of people have a lot of things they want to accomplish, and that's kind of where it stops in some cases. Like, how did you end up becoming a person that, like, what's that difference? Like, what is a doer? Like, how did you find yourself being a person that like takes your goals that seriously and takes the initiative to do these things?
Gosh, I don't know, because I feel like I've always been that way. And maybe it's my parents. I mean, I always had goals. Like that's how I was a big athlete growing up, and that's how I would earn like things. Like I didn't really get an allowance because I was always doing swimming or playing soccer. So I didn't so I would earn things. Like I got my first little red boombox by like improving my time at a swim meet. So like I always had these goals to achieve, and that's how I kind of would like earn things. And so that was maybe set early on. It was like, oh, I just need to keep striving and get to the next thing, and not really ever satisfied.
Yeah.
I'm also a Virgo, and that's a perfectionist tendency. And so then, yeah.
Me too. But, well, of course, one, I don't tend to subscribe to that idea. But two, if I entertain it for a minute, I've had this conversation with people, and I don't think of myself as a perfectionist. I do sometimes, though. This is pointless for me to be talking about, but part of the reason that I don't might have something to do with the disenchantment I feel about the concept of perfection and how unachievable it feels. And so maybe I'm a little sad that perfection is so hard to attain. I don't know, but I have some relationship with perfection. Some Geminis in particular would tell me. But anyway, it's still, it's a trait that I notice in some of the most, I don't know, goal-oriented people I know, especially also in artists that are like the most determined to, achieve a certain outcome, be in a certain place with their art. They just have this sort of, never rest mentality. It's never over. It's never good enough mentality.
I feel like for me, it's not like achieving the perfect 100. It's more about like if I don't try my hardest, then I'm going to be really mad at myself for missing an opportunity or not giving it my all. It's not that I ever get to that point or expect that I will. It's like if I didn't at least try do the best I could, then I'm not really pleased with myself.
Yeah, I mean, I dig that, and I think it seems like a better. It's not better, whatever, but it seems like for those who can't tap into their own goals to that degree and be that committed to like trying to pursue them in the best way they could imagine doing it, that does seem like you could potentially be missing something. I mean, that's like for me, that's something I feel sometimes is like I almost wish that I knew what it was like to take certain goals that seriously, because it's kind of hard. It like really drains a lot of energy, it seems like.
Yeah. I get tired sometimes.
You get tired sometimes.
I mean, I think it is hard because it means that I have really high expectations of people. Not that they do these things, but that they exert a certain amount of effort. And I think when I think somebody should be trying a little bit harder and they don't, I guess that's harder for me to stomach. Because I really think that they can do that. Like, it's that I believe in them more than sometimes they believe in themselves.
I know what that feels like firsthand, and that's a real thing. And like some people, like in my experience of it, I don't know if it's belief or I don't know if it's like just a different order of what's most valuable. Like if comfort is more valuable than goals, because sometimes I think that's what it is. Like people just don't want to stress themselves out taking their goals too seriously. But I don't know. I think that's an admirable thing, an interesting thing to notice in a person, I guess.
Yeah. It's not necessarily right all the time.
Yeah.
It is who I am, and I probably am not going to change this way in my life. And so I just have to absorb it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen that is kind of what is guiding Aperture forward, I guess. Do you feel like Aperture has changed a lot over the years?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that I've had to be and Aperture's had to be is adaptable and flexible. I mean, there's lots of reasons for change that were both in and out of our control.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not at all what it was in 2010, but there's a lot of reasons why.
Yeah. 2010, it's been 12 years now, I guess. Mm-hmm. Wild. I guess, it must have changed a lot in 12 years.
I mean, just think about the film industry alone, the changes that, I mean, Netflix was not Netflix in 2010.
Right.
Amazon Studios didn't exist, and
Yeah.
3D happened at some point. There was like the 3D boom in there. Mm-hmm. A lot sort of changed in the last decade.
Yeah, and Winston changed a lot. A lot of things changed in 12 years. So, like, I don't want to, I'm really trying, I guess, not to exhaust certain topics based on what is to come. But what do you think, do you have an idea, as we've addressed your goal orientation and how you are, do you have a vision, I guess, for what Aperture is like becoming, different from what it is or whatever?
I think if you had asked me in 2020, I would have had one. I think that the pandemic took a lot out of us, and now I think we're still in this recovery sort of mode, and I certainly have goals and intentions for us, but it's sometimes hard when we're still trying to welcome people back and to get them to remember what how they used to behave and come to films. And So there's a lot of reminding people
Yeah.
about cinema right now. So
Yeah.
I don't know what, I don't know if where we are now is where is the future, or we're going to get back to 2019.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I choked myself up. Super not convenient to do on a podcast. Yeah, you're right. I guess there's a lot about that that's unpredictable. So we could talk about that, I guess, if it isn't weird to talk about. But just like in the music industry and in the local music economy, like stuff is not bouncing back totally quickly.
They did I don't know where it was always thought that the arts would take just a lot longer than anything else to return to 2019.
That's just
where it
like
was.
kind of a prediction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's held true.
Yeah.
I think that if you think about it, people's habits really changed over 2 years in all sorts of ways. And so I think, and we were closed for 14 months. So that was a lot of time when people that came to see a lot of films just had to figure out other things to do during that time. And it's not a bad thing. It just is a different thing.
I try to understand that. I still find myself always trying to understand it all better, especially as shows have picked back up, and I've been trying to play more shows doing music stuff, and audiences are still pretty hard to come by. And sometimes I wonder if, earlier a thought I was entertaining was like, well, I wonder if, because this all felt like a threat to our mortality, a threat to our existence, I wonder if our minds still have a little bit of this kind of protection mode that they exist in, to the point that art isn't a primary priority to us or something, because that's more of a leisure almost, or a privilege.
Like a nice to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe people are having more dinner parties because they couldn't do that. I don't know. It's it's a mystery. I'm not sure what people are doing differently with their time. They're just making different decisions. And but there's a positive. Is we're kind of showing some different films than we showed, sometimes more commercial films than we showed before the pandemic. And that means that we're getting new audiences in the door, which is really nice. Sometimes they're younger and they're just they weren't coming before. And so surprisingly, I'm really kind of a pessimist, or a realist is what I say, but I'm optimistic that if everybody kind of returns to their old behavior and we've got these new people coming, that maybe it'll be like this really cool rebirth. And
Yeah, I could see that. And I think in a different way, I think art in general, if this idea I'm playing with is correct in any way, I think there will come a time where art will be really valuable to people when they feel the need for it, And I think the question might just be when people actually transition. It might take a while, it might not take all that long. I'm not really sure, but
I think, we need art. I think people just got comfortable enjoying the art in their house.
I think it's worse than that.
What do you think it is?
I think our nervous systems really, really got rattled, and I think people might, in a lot of cases, they're actually, it's not like it's just convenient. I think they're legitimately afraid of doing. They're more afraid of certain things, and so their mind, in some cases, is just kind of it just avoids opportunities to be in certain circumstances or something like that.
But they're still listening to the artist at home. I think they're still enjoying the art in their safe way. And so they're just not coming out with other people to partake in it.
Yeah, as we've seen, A-Mobile got off the ground, and I guess it seemed like that would have been something that more people would have compensated for the lack of public movies in their life by going to these outdoor movies in these places. and I mean, to me, it feels as though people haven't really connected to that in the way that maybe either of us would have anticipated.
Yeah, I think that we had a mobile in the middle of the pandemic and it was like this potential drive-in opportunity, I think it would have gone gangbusters. I think now it's like there's so many other things for people to do outside along with what they picked up doing during the pandemic. And it's like, I don't know, it's this weird phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it's like, well, I could go back inside the movie theater now. Like, I don't have to just be outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of... Plus, you know, it rains every time we sit at the freaking screen.
Well, there is that too. Has your relationship with art consumption changed since COVID?
Not really. I mean, we buy a ton of records and we watch a ton of TV and watch a lot of films.
Yeah.
So, not really.
Mine did kind of, I think. I don't know how to explain it though, but I do feel more like, and we joke sometimes about me not going to shows or whatever, and I do feel more like I should go to
really?
shows now. Yeah. Yeah. I feel, I don't know. I think part of it now is I've been connecting so much more with other musicians through this that I feel like, wow, like I've missed a lot of things. And like, I don't care if I'm not going to pay like $80 to go see someone, but just going to shows that maybe like that are local and that would benefit the local music economy probably would be a good idea.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, two questions came to mind. One, like, what was shit like during the pandemic for you? Like, I know everything changed and everyone was gone and like a lot of stuff. And I know you had the cat. What, I don't even remember what it was called now. The cinema from home or whatever.
Oh, virtual cinema.
Virtual cinema. Obviously, that was all very uncomfortable, whatever. But and I guess I'm not necessarily talking about when you were working for Aperture, though. You can talk about whatever you want. But I'm just wondering what you occupied your time with when you weren't doing that all the time.
I didn't stop work. Like, surprisingly, I think I worked more during the pandemic than ever because I was kind of like in this survival mode where I felt like I needed to keep Aperture front and center in some way or people would forget about it because we weren't open. And that was a lot of virtual cinema. I mean, we showed over 200 films in that time, and I watched all of those films. And then, you know, we did some other things like we tried crazy stuff. Like we had concession sales. I don't know if you knew this, but with one of our staff members, we like experimented with popcorn flavors, and he would like try different seasonings in his house, and then we do taste testing, and like I would go pick them up, and you'd stick them in the trunk because you know you weren't supposed to see anybody, and then like I'd serve it to my family, and and we were gonna like have flavored popcorn at Aperture.
Yeah.
It was just like I was willing to do whatever to just keep things going. And also because we were just burning through our cash for a while until we were able to get some government funding. And I was like, well, how can I bring money in when like we don't actually have a business right now? Yeah, so I was it felt like I was back in 2008 and 2009 when I was planning for Aperture to be open. It was like, what do we do? Like, what can, like I was like trying anything and everything.
Yeah, so you never stepped away from it.
No, we did in the summer of 2020 drive across the country and camped and stuff.
Where'd you go?
We drove from here to Seattle. I had family in Seattle, and we stopped and camped in the Badlands and Yellowstone and up into Montana. and then back through the arches, and we went to some really cool national parks. It was actually the best time because the national parks had just reopened, and so like Yellowstone probably was the least crowded it will ever be, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really grateful to have had that trip. It was nice.
Yeah, it sounds like a big epic trip for such a dramatic time.
Yeah, I needed it though. And my husband was still working. Like, he was working remotely this whole time, but he like was working in the van while I was driving the whole time. And we'd have to like pull off so he could have like a Zoom call and not lose signal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was nice to just not take my mind off of work. for that
Yeah.
time.
And did it work?
Yeah, I mean, I came back and I was like, okay, well, we're clearly going to be closed for a lot longer. And what are we going to do to...
Yeah. Yeah. It was a weird time.
What's the word? It was not a fun time.
No, it was so crazy. It felt so crazy at the time in the thick of it. And just like the phone calls and the transitions and just when it finally I remember the day that it happened, felt like a grenade went off or something.
You mean March 13th?
Was that whatever day that...
What, we decided to close?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was like a week before... That was like a week before everyone else did. Mm-hmm. Maybe 2 weeks. I'm not sure. Maybe a week and a half or something. But, you know, you came back from a meeting and you said, we think this is the right thing to do. And it just was like, whoa, like Aperture is going to close for the first time in whatever, in 10 years.
Yeah. It was weird to make that call, but in my gut, it was like, I don't want to bring people into this space and them get sick. Like, that was the bottom line. I couldn't think beyond that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we should just close. And then everything started to close. And then it was like, but nobody thought it was going to be more than 2 weeks or something. I mean, it was not like I'm making this decision now and it's going to be 14 months till we're going to reopen.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be something like a month and a half. That's what I kind of expected.
No, and then to have to lay people off not one time but twice. I mean, that was not fun at all.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, and we had also like we'd really got to a place, I think, where Aperture felt like it was firing on all cylinders in a way, and then it just, you know.
Yeah, that was our 10th anniversary year. We had all sorts of...
Yeah.
I mean, I hadn't even planned everything yet. But yeah, it was going to be like this. We were in a really good spot. It was like, oh, that was like, yeah, we can think about what we want to be doing in 5 years and 10 years.
Yeah, let's revisit that idea. I mean, do you remember what that felt like and what you hoped that Aperture would look like in the future at that point?
No, I mean, one of the things that we'd just gotten off the ground was our whole education arm and the classes we were doing.
That's
and
right.
We had a summer camp and we were talking about the next summer, and we had a whole person this was their job. And it's like, that still hasn't returned.
Yeah.
We were having regular field trips, and we really were so optimistic about what that was going to look like. Because it had taken so much work to get there. Yeah, and it's sad to me that we're not, we don't have that back yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been the unfortunate I mean, it changed things to the point. I mean, it's not the type thing you can just like put it all back in place. You know, it changed everything on a massive scale.
Yeah, and it's still it's still changing things. And
yeah, and then obviously there's this other side of the world. Everybody, this might not be the greatest territory to go to, but it's just like on top of some of those real world limitations and just the impact. This whole subject around all this shit has like changed the way that people relate to one another. You know, it's changed a lot about where we are as a society, and that kind of makes things all the more complicated.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about cinemas is that they are spaces where you sit in the dark with people that might not look like you or think like you or believe in the things you believe in, but for 2 hours you can just put that on hold and you can sit there and enjoy a film. And
Right.
I feel like now I think there's people that might not want to be in rooms with other people that think differently than them for a movie, and that makes me really sad because
Yeah, me too. Well, so
this
let's.
was a really downer segment.
It's good. It's good. Usually these podcasts are like just so laugh out loud funny and like high energy, and people just love it so much. So I think it's good to balance it out with
Good. I'm glad
more
I'm
somber
balancing
note.
out with this somber like.
No, a lot of my episodes are horribly serious. As you know me probably fairly well, I have that side to me. But let's talk about movies. I've heard what your number one choice is, but you've seen a lot of movies. Do you have like a top 20?
I knew I should have looked at my list before it came. Oh, you have a hummingbird out the window. Sorry, I love hummingbirds. No, I can't rattle films off my.
No.
I literally have thousands of films in my head. Like I have to like go back and remember all the films that I've seen.
Do you have any?
I do have a list of 100. Like I did recently go through all the films and put my top 100 that we've ever shown into a list.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's why I always say Amelie, because it's like I can remember that and I can always like talk about that. And beyond that, I was just thinking the other day how if I could just extract like all the music lyrics from my brain, I would free up so much RAM to like fill it with things that I don't know.
Yeah.
Those seem to come so easily out, right? And you can regurgitate them. It's the other things that.
Yeah. I often feel like my brain is like a filing cabinet, and there's like literal space in there that I can access.
But I don't know how to get to it and then get things out of it.
Yeah.
Like I put the stuff in and then it get lost. It's like
It's in there. Yeah.
there's no like Dewey Decimal System.
Yeah. Yeah. That is an unfortunate thing.
But then I can hear a song on the radio from like the 80s that I haven't heard in a long time and sing it like all the words. It's like, where is that coming from?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So what else do you want to talk about movies since I can't
no,
name any of them?
You can take your pick between these. I could either ask, I could either tell me why Amelie is your favorite movie, or you can tell me what some of your, like maybe less obvious, you could call them guilty pleasures, or you can call them mainstream choices, or just some of the more like things people might not expect you to dig.
Yeah, I can do both of those. So Amelie, I love because I saw it in the Angelica Cinema in New York City. And I saw it after 9/11, and I think it was like pretty soon after. And like I just loved the film, but it wasn't just the film that I loved. It was seeing it again, like going back and doing, something that I love to do in New York. And Angelica is not this fancy cinema. Like the subway runs underneath it. So you'll feel the subway when the train, like you'll just feel it in your seat. So it's not this like upscale fancy seats, but just it's this special place, and it's just about the movies that you're watching. And I think Aperture is like that. It's not fancy, and it's doesn't have all the bells and whistles that you can get other places. People hate our screens sometimes; they're too high, or the seats aren't comfy. But like, if you forget about all that and just watch the film, it's a great space.
Yeah.
And we don't have a subway underneath us, so at least we have that going for us.
Yeah. So does the ambiance of Aperture, does that remind you of, did you say Angelica?
Angelica. Yeah.
The Angelica?
Mm-hmm.
Is there some stuff in common there?
I think that it's not big. It's in the middle of a city,
Yeah.
with everything going around, and you can. I mean, the reason Aperture's downtown is so that you can go eat dinner before or after a film, or go out for a drink, or go to something else, and you have that downtown experience. And going to a movie is just part of all of it.
Yeah.
So that's, to me, that is how it's similar to the Angelica. Yeah, it just got this indie vibe.
Yeah.
It's not a multiplex. Like, doesn't look like lots of other theaters look.
So did that play a huge role in why Amelie had this place for you? Like what you loved about it so
Yeah,
much?
it was like it was all of it. It wasn't just the film itself, which I love. She's just such a quirky character. It's in French. Like, everything about it is just cool. And it was a time in my life that I, saw it too. I mean, it all goes, that's what movie memories are, is like, it's not just the film. When you see it in a cinema, it's everything that is part of that day.
Yeah.
And that experience. And you can't, when you do that at home, yes, you can like the film and you can appreciate the film, but you don't have all of that. You don't have a story around it. You just have the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%.
Mm-hmm. So the other film that people might not know I like is a film called Can't Buy Me Love. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
I don't think I have.
It's one of those, like, that I had on VHS that I, recorded from the TV. So it had the commercials in it.
Yeah.
And then it was censored. So, like, I only thought, like, in, like, watching it as an adult, the parts that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
I never saw those parts, but I could, like, quote that film. I saw it was, like, came out when I was in middle school, but I could quote it, and,
Did you watch movies like over and over when you were
yeah.
younger? Yeah. Yeah, I did too. Men in Black, Ghostbusters as a kid. Me and my dad and I saw Men in Black in theaters like over and over because I just
Really?
wouldn't stop watching it for some reason. One of my cinema memories was going to see, I think, Good Burger at the movies, and about a minute in, like the reel just disappeared. The lights came on, and the guy said, the movie's all messed up, and you can go do something else. And for like the sixth time, my dad was like, well, we can't see this. We can just walk into like Men in Black. And we went and saw it again. Just wouldn't stop watching it.
Yeah.
Don't know why. Loved it.
But what about the sequels?
I actually just watched the third one about a week ago again. Yeah, the stuff about those movies, the style of them, I find, like, it reminds me of my childhood, and I can just kind of experience that ambiance pretty easily. That more like that aesthetic, I guess, pretty easily, and just kind of whether I'm focused on it or just let it play in the room.
Yeah. There's a lot, and I don't know, maybe some scientists have studied brains. When you do, I think films that you see in your childhood and the memories you make, really, when you watch them again, you kind of just, you're back there.
Mm-hmm.
They like trigger something.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird how that works. And I'd be very curious to know what it lights up in your brain. For a while, this is weird, but at one point in time when I would clean the house, I would cut on 90s commercials compilations on YouTube. And it sounded exactly like I was back in like my grandparents' house as a kid. And I found that comforting for some reason.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
How your brain works.
Yeah.
But one of the things that in this back to 2020 that we had started, that I had seen done at a theater in Boston, is we were working with some like memory care groups and some counselors, and we were doing free screenings for people with dementia, like older films, and their
Wow.
caregivers too. And we had just started doing that, and the idea was like that these were films that they have memories of, and they just they can participate and It was kind of really special and cool, and I'm sad that we haven't been able to bring those back.
Did you ever get any feedback on like?
Yeah, like I mean, it wasn't just the people, with the memory issues. It was the people that got to bring them, and it was like they were watching them be happy and remember.
Wow.
It just kind of, for those 2 hours, it just did something special for them.
That really is. That's something else.
I'd like to do those again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's something else.
You don't remember those?
I remember like
We
groups.
did like 3 of them.
I don't know if I knew explicitly that was like what was happening. I think I knew what groups were associated with that, but maybe I didn't know that part of it,
Yeah, that was why.
Yeah, I like that.
So if there's a potential sponsor out there that wants to help us bring those back.
Yeah. So other cinema, one of my most profound cinema experiences was probably seeing, I should say most emotional, was probably seeing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at Aperture with like staff members. We were blown away and shocked, and I was just, I mean it immediately became on up there as like one of my all-time favorites, I think.
Yeah, that was pretty cool that we got to play that film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are too many cool films and experiences that we've had. And it's funny that, I mean, I have my cool experiences and what I think was fun to play, but then everybody else has their own.
Mm-hmm.
And they're different from mine, and they're different from each other's. And, like, that's what, to me, is so cool about a cinema. And it would be the same for, a music venue or a museum. I mean, it's like art is in the eye of the beholder, right? Or the ear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's like I don't have to like everything that we show or that I program, because I can't possibly. Like, that would not be fun if I was only showing things that I like.
You know different curators throughout the country probably, I'm sure, and like programmers and stuff. Like, do you think that happens in cinema?
What, that they're only showing the things that I think it definitely does.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't study film. Like, I didn't get a degree in film. So I entered it, like I said, from just enjoying films and not seeing them as other people see them. I mean, I certainly have a critical eye and I appreciate good quality filmmaking, but I'm also trying to take the whole range of people that might see a film into consideration and not be too
Yeah.
People have different tastes and different backgrounds and appreciations.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen over the years in every direction imaginable all sorts of different parts of people's identities sort of interfere with their ability to kind of experience not just film but all art forms. And I could rattle off examples, but for me it seems like a really sad idea when folks I guess what I'm saying is what I appreciate about what you're saying and where you're coming from is it worries me when I notice that folks maybe they let some maybe aspect of their identity sort of interfere with them in a way that keeps them from having an open mind about experiencing such things, especially in the arts. Like, I can't look at this painting. I refuse to look at this painting. I refuse to look at this film. I refuse to listen to this artist because of
Read
these.
this book, yeah.
Yeah, read this book because of these things. And that's what I think I have appreciated most about Aperture over the years, was just like as a space in which people can experience perspectives that are just not confined by being so. Maybe that's what's fun about art house cinema too, is it's not confined by being so easy to like that it's just like a blockbuster hit, because that's what I think of as blockbuster hits. It's like they're the least common denominator kind of thing. There's something that they're so it's not that they're just necessarily generic, but it's easy to like them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's fun about art house cinema is sometimes it's like it's just more challenging, or it's more interesting, or there's more to sink your teeth into, and maybe you won't come out liking it in the same way you like Spider-Man, but it might be a different experience, you know?
Yeah. I mean, for sure. And I think a good art house film sort of teaches you or engages you or makes you think a little bit differently about something. And you might not always realize it when you leave the theater immediately. Like, it might take you some time. But yeah, those are the films that I really like to play and program.
Yeah, I would imagine as a programmer that well, I don't know. It's interesting. I remember I have at least been experienced to some of these different perspectives about what that all entails and what kind of movies should be included or whatever. And yeah, I guess I hadn't thought a ton about the human impact on that, and the fact that like you could hypothetically decide you only want your audience to see movies that like a cinema could have agendas or some shit like that. You know, a cinema could have leanings or tastes that say, you know, I'm just gonna show my audience these type of films, which is sounds unappealing to me, I guess.
Yeah, I don't sometimes I don't think it's necessarily intentional, but it might just be somebody with lots of experience and education in film, deep knowledge of what's considered like the best filmmaking might just skew towards showing films that fit that.
Yeah.
And film changes so quickly, and what people are making and putting out there that you can't, I mean, that if you just do that, then you're going to miss all these like ways that people are telling stories. And yeah, I think it's, I'm not saying that I'm good like at my job, but I do think that I think about our audience and making sure that everybody feels like they can come to Aperture and see something that is for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I try hard to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably okay to say you're good at it. I don't know.
I think I've gotten better. I mean, I've definitely learned, now that I've been doing it so long, I've definitely learned a lot. And I think I've gotten better. But yeah, it's a fun job. I will say that.
Yeah. So, do you mind if, maybe I'll ask you, like, what is on the immediate horizon? And, like, maybe one thing that would be nice to ask is just at what scale? Like, are y'all kind of back at 100% capacity at this point? Not in terms of people, but how, like, what is the routine now for when you're open and what the hours are and all that good stuff?
So one thing that we returned from that we are not open on Mondays now, and maybe we won't ever be, which is kind of nice to have. Before the pandemic, we were open every single day of the year, like the holiday, like there was never a day that we weren't open, and that is really hard to do. To know that you're never closed. So it is nice to have Mondays now as this day. Like, we know we're just not going to be open. And at least we'll have that in a week, that everything else is not going wrong, or we're dealing with all sorts of things. We at least have Monday where we don't have to like turn on the projectors and pop popcorn.
That's legit.
It is. I mean, it is kind of a huge thing. But otherwise, we're pretty much back to our normal schedule. We haven't brought back we were doing morning matinees on Saturday and Sunday mornings. We haven't quite brought those back yet. Because honestly, our capacity, I mean, I don't know, maybe we're at 60% of 2019. Like, it's just not warranted to add any more show times when we're not really filling the ones we have yet. So.
Yeah.
I love the morning matinees. I would like to bring those back. That felt very big city, like New York thing to do.
Yeah. It was usually, I used to work a lot of Sunday mornings, and it was usually a really peaceful time and like a very distinct crew of people that came in weekly. And it was like, that was their time to see the movie, and they loved it. And it was like they had their brisk Sunday morning walk in the cool air and saw the movie.
Yeah, it was a thing. It was fun.
Got their coffee. Yeah.
I actually love to see movies in the morning.
Yeah. Oh, that was the other question I was going to ask you. Like, you watch so many movies. Do you get bored of watching movies?
No, but I'd have drawn a line that, I mean, it is my job. So when I'm watching it, like, that's work. And so it's really hard to do that at night. Like, I really try to not watch movies for Aperture, like, at night or on, I mean, I do sometimes have to do them on the weekend, but I need to, like, balance not working all the time. And so we watch a lot of TV.
Yeah.
Or we watch non-Aperture films.
Yeah.
Because I also have a almost 15-year-old who loves every single Marvel movie that comes out. So we go see those. And
Sure. Yeah. Like, I mean, is it a pretty different experience watching a movie through the lens of this is an Aperture movie versus getting immersed in one? Like, are you able to get immersed in those movies?
wait, the non-Aperture ones?
In the Aperture ones.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes, and I love it. I just have to balance that I could be doing that all the time, and I have to draw a line. I can't make
you can
my
watch them
family
all
watch.
the time?
Yeah, there's so many films. I mean,
I see.
yeah.
So it's not like, okay. Yeah, because I was wondering if it was like, you know, like, oh, it's so tedious. Like, am I going to have to watch another movie? But it sounds like you get, like, you're not like that.
No, like I'm about to go to the Toronto Film Festival in
Yeah.
a couple of days where I'll see like 25 films probably if I can manage it. And I don't get burnt. I mean, it's very like, I come back and I'm like so excited because it's like, oh, we have all these films that people are going to get to watch over the next year.
That's cool.
It's very sort of reinvigorating.
That's cool. I don't really know how you do that. Because
It's draining.
I mean, I love movies, but, and I mean, I watch movies a lot, but I don't know if I could watch them with that much intentionality and focus and thinking of it as the future or something.
It's hard on your brain seeing 5 films a day for 7 days. I mean, it is exhausting mentally because you can imagine all of our films aren't sort of like, some can be very challenging.
Yeah.
Mentally.
Yeah.
But it's also like you kind of get this adrenaline going because you're like, oh, like I'm so excited to see this film from this director. And so it's like you move on to the next film in the list. And
Yeah. So I'm not going to bombard you with more and more and more questions. I'll try to wrap it up soon, but there's a question about story. Like, there's been a lot of different ideas about what stories are for throughout our history. And I don't know what you subscribe to, but like, you're basically in the business of telling people stories. Like, you've kind of expressed throughout the conversation appreciation for different things about the discipline within film, but what is it about stories that is so valuable?
well, I mean, I talked about all the arts that go into film, but to me, the best films have the most original story. Like, if you don't have a good story to tell, it doesn't matter if you've got a high production film or you've got these amazing, talented actors or amazing music. I mean, if the story isn't there, then it's not going to be a good film. And so, like, that's like when I go to festivals or watch films, like that's ultimately what I'm looking for. Because to me, some of the best films don't look like the best films. They might be low production value or shot on an iPhone, but the story gets you. So the stories are the absolute most important thing.
And what do you think? I mean, when we talk about a story getting us, I mean, I know what that means. I know what that feels like as an artist. And like, there's something about performing music that's similar to that. There's something about getting someone, but it's hard to understand what that is. Like, some folks have believed, that we have this really deep traditional, relationship with what stories are, like people like, what's his name? The guy, Joseph Campbell, and Carl Jung, and these people who've kind of tried to put into words why we appreciate stories so much as a part of our past and stuff. Like, I don't know. It's a strange piece of tradition.
I think because before there was anything else, there were stories, right? Like before there was instruments to play music and anything to make a film or paint or tools to write, it was like you could make up stories and you could tell them and then people could keep telling them. And so it was the basis of all of the arts, really.
And today, I mean, yeah, some of those stories have lasted like thousands of years longer than any movie is honestly likely to do, probably, in terms of, I mean, I guess there's a different question in there about like whether these stories that we're experiencing, like a Marvel movie, is it really different than a story like Beowulf? Like, maybe it isn't. Maybe those stories are just still the same thing happening over and over.
And yeah, getting retold in different ways. And
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. We're about to show E.T. on Friday. It's like the 40th anniversary, so we're
Fun.
But it's like, you know about E.T. as this extraterrestrial little guy, and like whether or not you've ever seen the film, like the story of E.T. became its own sort of thing, and you can tell the story of E.T. and Elliot and never having had to see the film.
Yeah, that's true. And like somebody said once, stories are either what was it? Something like stories are either someone new came to town, or you went to town, or like you went to a new place. It's like that's one of the two things.
Yeah.
Or those are the two stories that get told. Something like that. I think it was either a writer or a filmmaker or somebody said that.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay. Obvious question. What's up with the ETs that are around Aperture?
There's just one.
Is there one? I thought there was like little ones and two. There's the big one.
I guess there is the big one. The big one has the robe on it.
Yeah.
And it talked at one point, and then I think it said like phone home.
Yeah.
They just came from people. I think that was my brother worked with autistic kids for a while, and for whatever reason got an ET because the kids liked that, and so it somehow ended up at Aperture. I don't know where the little ones came from.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's all sorts of random things at Aperture.
There definitely are. Have you showed ET before?
Yeah, we did. We showed it for like a kid series, and I remember taking that ET doll and standing with it on the bridge over Broad Street and like holding it so I could get a shot of Winston-Salem in the background.
Oh,
like
weird.
A social media post. Yes.
Fun. Well,
I should have brought the ET here.
Yeah. And I used to do a centerpiece, and I keep forgetting to do it, but I'm supposed to have like a little centerpiece
Can you
here.
like Photoshop the ET guy?
I should actually be able to, yeah. If you can give me a good picture of him, I'll try to cut him in. Even if he's not, he's going to show up at this part in the video, and he's going to look so weird.
That will be really great.
Yeah. Well, I think I shouldn't keep you too much longer. Maybe Aperture stuff, what's on the horizon or whatever.
I don't know. It's weird. Like I love obviously to talk about Aperture, and it's also very challenging because people in general like to talk about movies and pop culture. Like when I go to a party, it's like they want to talk about movies, and you can't talk about movies if you don't talk about Aperture. Like it's just like, so I constantly feel like I'm talking about Aperture and movies, and like I don't want to force people to talk about them. It's
Yeah.
like this odd, if you think about it, place to be,
Uh-huh.
which I'm just now like, I think the other day we went to this party and we were talking with two people for the first time. And like, you're like, what do you do to my husband and I? And I was like, oh, I don't want to go down the road of like having to like, oh, aperture, that must be like, they sort of all start out that way. So like I let my husband talk about like his job and what he did and like strategically just avoided answering it. Cause sometimes I feel like it monopolizes conversations and I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
And I'm just starting to like have strategies to like not do that.
Yeah.
Is that weird?
No, it makes good sense. And I mean, obvious, like, I mean, of course, whatever. I just hope, like, I hope I hope I tried to take the conversation to more like places in your mind. But of course, I mean, yeah, we talked a lot about aperture and
Yeah, but I
movies
mean,
and
I know
stuff.
this is different because like you,
Okay,
you
cool.
had me on there, and we talked about things I hadn't talked about before, so that was cool. I appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've been in Winston commerce for a bit, and I could pick your brain for a long time about what Winston could be and all that stuff, and I mean, I did when I talked to Max about that, and I think I'm trying to be selective about not putting business owners in positions where I'm like, come on, talk shit about Winston, but
Yeah, that's
you
really
know,
good.
yeah, but. I mean, I wouldn't mind at least asking you, given your experience in Winston, like what you could see Winston becoming, or what you hope it comes back to. Maybe. I mean, do you
Yeah.
think that all of downtown is having the same problems that Aperture is having right
Yeah,
now?
I do actually. I think downtown took a big hit,
Yeah.
and I think that we see it as businesses downtown, but I don't think it's understood more broadly that it's like people need to be proactive about doing stuff downtown, or it will go back to how it was when I left Winston and said I wasn't coming back. I mean, yes, there are more residents there and people living, but can't count on them to support all of downtown. I mean, they're just living there.
Yeah.
So I think more just awareness that things that you want, things like Aperture, things like the Ramcat, they only can exist if people support them and are consciously like aware that it's really hard to have a small business, and especially ones that their product is in the hands of somebody else, like music or movies. You know, we're beholden to the artists making the films and the distributors buying them, and that's not in our control is programming those films, but like that's not a product that we're making, and so we don't have we're not making the food, right, and creating that. So I think those businesses have an even bigger challenge.
Yeah. To me, it feels as though sometimes, like, when I go back downtown now, it looks a little bit like when I was like a little kid. And I think, I mean, when we're talking about people coming in from out of downtown, I think a lot of people think that maybe when, I want to say this without sounding like weird or whatever, but I think just my impression is like, I think the question of whether downtown was still as safe as it was is a question right now for some people. It looks different now.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the core of downtown is where Aperture is. It's 4th and Cherry and Marshall, and that's always, you kind of grow and spread out so that you're growing in density, right? And we now have a lot of pockets like Industry Hill and like Bailey, and like where the ballpark is, that are outside of that, and you can kind of go to those and park your car and not go, not go to the rest of the center part of downtown. And like, we need to figure out, like, it needs to, all of the places in between those places and the center of downtown all need to be filled out for us to have like a successful and vibrant downtown. And if
That's
we don't
interesting.
do that, it's probably not going to work in the long run. Because then you're just doing what happened with suburbia. Like, you're just kind of growing out
Yeah.
and losing focus of the main part of downtown.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Because people want to walk. I mean, that's the whole idea of downtown. Like, is it's walkable and people want to walk.
Yeah.
And leave their car and be able to go to all these different places. And if they're too spread out, then.
So, do you get the sense that downtown is still pretty, like, is it still what it was, like, prior to the pandemic? Is it still as neighborhoody? Is everybody chill down there?
It's definitely a little bit more quiet. I mean, there were some restaurants that closed, sadly. So, like, there's just gaps, and there's sometimes don't seem to be as many people out. And I don't know if that's just people not working as much. I mean, it's not just a Winston-Salem. It's like all downtowns have sort of seen a change. And in the meantime, other things have opened in other places. And but it's definitely, I feel like we're missing, there's a lot of restaurants in our immediate area that aren't open right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're like, it's like, oh, where do we tell people to go eat dinner? Like, it's just, I'm hopeful that some new things will open up soon.
Yeah. I think for some people, I don't know what it would take. Some people just don't give a shit about doing anything, and some people do, and that's the people we're talking about, I guess. And those people that are on that line, I just wonder, because I don't know, but what I'm navigating around, and who knows if this will even make the podcast or not, but I have this cousin that's a cop, and we were trying to talk about what the hell was going on in society and whatever. And the impression I think some people have who don't live downtown and who don't stay down there all the time is that that there's it feels more like the wild, wild west in a way.
Oh God, I don't want people to think that.
I know.
It's not like that.
Okay.
I live downtown.
Well, that's why I'm asking you. Yeah.
Back and forth at night from my house to Aperture, and I feel safe. I mean, it's also like the more people that come down and are active downtown, the safer it becomes, right? I mean, it's all about people being there and living there and present, and
yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
So I don't want people to avoid it.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I'm kind of screwed in every way. Like all of the business that I do and all of the stuff that I'm passionate about is connected to downtown, and I worry about downtown being like semi-abandoned by some people or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's just like some people are more nervous than they've ever been, and that's, I think, something I worry about, not too much, but something I notice more so than worry about is just it looks different, and it feels like.
But I think some of the residents there just will be more people because they're living like right in the middle of downtown, and I think that will maybe help people's perception of safety. Also, it's just better for the planet if people live closer together. I mean,
yeah, sort of. Unless they're growing their own food.
Right. Well, yeah, I think.
Yeah. Well, you can do that in downtown.
People downtown can go buy it at the farmer's market, where all the people that grow their own food come together in one place to sell their food to the downtown people. You
like a city environment, I guess.
I love I love what you have here. I just don't want to do the yard work that's required.
Yeah. Yeah. But, well, there was something. I feel like in our time knowing each other, I feel like I've gotten the impression that you really embody sort of the positive idea of what it means to be downtown. But, well, maybe it's just that part of the conversation we were talking about, the knowledge you have about actually how business works and probably maybe how economics works. But,
Well, I think I do have my MBA. So like I was not scared to like write a business plan and to think about financials and all the things that I was taught in school that go into running. I mean, normally most people with their MBAs don't start small businesses. So like that I had that like a certain confidence that I had been educated and could do this.
yeah.
And the thing is, so many people open up small businesses with a lot less education that I have just because they have an idea and a passion for it and they're going to work really, really hard and have success.
Yeah.
And I think it's more about that than maybe what you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think me being the perfectionist that I said, like that, I needed that to sort of have that confidence to do it.
Yeah.
That I had that. I'd at least been taught things to help me.
Yeah, it's an interesting subject. Mainly, I get really fascinated with like contradictions or whatever, and kind of as we were talking about downtown and stuff, it's like, I mean, like we can I think acknowledge the fact that the country is divided into like two halves, more so than. Like it's growing that there's division between people and that they're identifying with this like political sort of binary spectrum, and cities often represent to people something whatever like a liberal ways of thinking or whatever, and there's an emphasis there on small business or whatever and the arts and all this shit, and I find it funny in a way because, like, I think that a lot of folks who fancy themselves maybe like opposite of liberal, people who might fancy themselves conservative, I think of themselves as wanting to support like the small business owner. But it's interesting to me that the small business owner tends to be in communities that are more so supported by liberals, if we're being honest.
Yeah, it is a contradiction.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it makes sense that small businesses would be close to each other so they can support each other. And like, it's the whole reason like Home Depot and Lowe's put their stores and Walgreens and CVS across the street from each other because they help each other. And yeah, that just makes me sad that downtown has this perception, and really it's not about that at all. Like it's about being able to put a bunch of stuff together and people living around it, and that's it. Like it's not it's more complex than that. It just makes sense. For lots of different reasons.
Cool.
But
well, I feel like I could take this way further than I should, because now it's into the territory where it's like it could become a much more complex conversation, and I think we're both starving, so maybe we should just let it linger here.
I mean,
and
I would come back to talk about downtown.
Okay, cool. I do like. I mean, soon the year will start over. From it'll be a year since I started this thing, and I don't really plan on like making it I want repeat personalities on this thing. I want to have like some regular people. So if you want to come on again, you're more than welcome.
Do you ever have two people come on?
I did one time. What I'd really like to do is get a better camera set up before I do more of that, because I'd really like to do some round tables and stuff.
Yeah, it'd be cool to talk to I mean, you've had several people that could also talk about downtown, particularly in the changes. I mean, somebody like Richard Emmett, like he was kind of at the beginning of way before Aperture was there.
Yeah, I would love to get some multiple brains into some conversations and just relate and talk. And I have plans to do so. I've got a lot more plans than I can execute right now. So anyway,
I can see that.
yeah,
I mean, I know.
yeah, but we'll get there. Well, cool. So on that note, I guess we'll leave this as a to be continued.
Okay.
All right.
To be continued.
To be continued soon. Hey, thank you for coming over and doing this for real.
Thanks for asking me.